organic growth peters out, is it still the answer to just try harder? Or might the organization consider acquisitions as an alternative?
There are statistics that demonstrate that all small businesses growing organically, and we're talking about small to mid-sized businesses, will hit walls. And those are at the $10 million mark, the $20 million mark, and this is in volume, and then at the $50 million mark. And they're not just hurdles, they are walls. So the question that we ask ourselves, I ask myself as a small business, is how do we get over those walls and get by them? Dave alluded to this earlier in the process. It all goes back to processes, discipline, as our as the mergers and acquisitions group has suggested, and also it goes back to ego. Is the founder, is the CEO, are they mindful of the fact that they have a limitation? Because in many cases, that's the restricting factor. They're the weak link in the chain, and they have to recognize that they're not the smartest person in the world, and they have to be willing to, number one, turn over the reins to somebody else who's got the capacity to climb that wall and take the group to another level. I'm sure we've all experienced it. We have staff in place, folks that we hired that got us to the first level. They've reached their capacity in their given position. That doesn't mean they can't fulfill a role in another seat in the bus, as Jim Collins might allude to. But typically, as organic growth is limited by skill set, by CEO and founder ego, and by capital. As our mergers and acquisitions folks have pointed to, we can raise capital anytime, right? Money you can find everywhere. Everybody believe that to be true? So we rely, in an organic situation, we rely on cash flow. And hopefully we're smart enough to get out of the way as CEOs, hire the right folks to take us over that wall and to the next level and be a good supporting cast for that future growth. That's what it takes. I can cite again my personal experience. I've tried to do everything as a CEO. I belong to a CEO dialogue group called Vistage, and my chair said to me, "Hey Bob, you got to get out of the way and you got to let these folks run." Well, I wish I'd done it 2 years earlier, because I promoted a fellow to president and head of operations. Basically I felt like I was at the starting line of a race and had my arms up holding our folks back, and when I made that move, I couldn't keep up. So, fortunately we had the right person on the bus, and that person was qualified to take us to the next level. And fortunately I had a good advisor who suggested I get out of the way and let that fellow run with it. No doubt there are walls. And certainly you can expect them. Again, having the discipline to hire the correct people, having the process in place, a hiring process, and a plan are all a strategic and important part of getting over those walls.
We talk a lot about statistics, and the interesting, spectacular written about statistics are the acquisitions that fail. In my anecdotal experience in the middle market, I think it's safe to say that more companies attempting to grow organically have failed, have gone down the tubes, even in times, and in fact particularly in times when there are economic pressures in the economy. So I don't think that statistics, even if generally accepted and discussed and cited, are necessarily informative in respect of any person's given company. There are risks in organic growth which to my mind are often solved by acquisition. I think people turn to acquisitions because they don't have the internal jam to in fact organize, step aside, promote, and loosen up I think you have to recognize who you are, what business you're in, what skill sets you need, what skill sets you own, what skill sets you don't own, what skill sets you can hire and can't hire. There's been a lot of discussion about the necessity to have a plan and to due diligence that's quite clear no matter how you plan to grow. But I think a realistic assessment of many businesses will indicate that it's a better bet, less of a risk, to try to make a move to do an acquisition rather than try to continue to grow in areas where you have, for whatever reason, been unsuccessful in growth up to that point in time.
With smaller businesses, when you're in an interesting situation where you're considering acquiring another company, it's often an owner-to-owner discussion. And it can go on for a good year while you find out, is this a good match or not?
I've had several inquiries about my company and offers from equity companies to purchase it, which is shocking to me. I'm in the construction business. We're probably in the worst recession since the Great Depression, 37% unemployment, 40% reduction in construction spending nationally. And I met with one of the folks that was interested in talking about purchase, and he had previously been in the printing business, and he had acquired 8 businesses to grow, mergers and acquisitions. And the interesting part of his story was, I said, well, what are you doing in the equity business and why are you here? And he said, well, one thing I failed to recognize as a printer was that I wasn't just a printer. I was in the marketing business. I didn't take the opportunity to become a web designer. I didn't take the opportunity to generate marketing material. I didn't take the opportunity to diversify and expand my businesses. So, you know, the economy does funny things to us private entrepreneurs. You know, panic sets in, anger, you know, but I've always been a firm believer that we make our own market. And as an example of diversification, as a real estate developer, Jim, you'll understand this, I'm still a farmer. I'm buying land at a discount. And I'm creating development opportunities in affordable housing, which, by the way, the state's glad to help support that with some grant money. I opened a facility services division, which is servicing our existing client base. When they call, they need maintenance on their building, so on and so forth. That created another opportunity. Interestingly, as an example, I met with a fellow from Shirley, Massachusetts, who's a friend of mine. He owns a container business. Trash, right? And the biggest part of his business was construction trash. What did he do? Intelligently, he started buying 2-yard containers and started servicing buildings. I'm going to take your trash. He created a recycling business to help take advantage of cardboard recycling, and he started buying trailers and setting them at businesses to help them manage their recycling business. So, how do you diversify? You know, Jim, as well as I do, that in my business, if you can swing a hammer and you've got a pickup truck, you're in business. All you need is a sign and a telephone. And so ease of entry is very low. So you have to deliver something different. You have to be able to deliver a competitive advantage, as you know. And diversification, particularly in this kind of economy, in order to survive, is mandatory.